Hi everybody, welcome back to the pod. Today we are talking about Gen Z and routes into employment, and more importantly about career choice, because a recent article we may have seen on Business Insider is talking about how young employees are less engaged at work, and that's according to Gallup data. So we're looking at pretty solid data source. So if the employee engagement is low when it comes to people entering the world of work, things that need to be sorted out, I think needs to be addressed in terms of what employers can do to make sure that people start their career, take those first steps with confidence. So let's get on with the chat. Hi both, how you doing?
All good? Great, thank you. All good.
It's great to have you both here. We have Steph from Generation UK and Ireland, and we have Conor from Not Going To Uni. But I'll leave the introductions to you guys. So let's start off with yourself, Steph.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So my name is Stefanie Horrell. I'm the admissions director at a global non-profit charity called Generation UK and Ireland. We're in about 16 different countries now, but I'm here representing the UK and Ireland branch. And we, in a nutshell, are a charity that delivers free training programs. We call them skills boot camps that place unemployed people into meaningful, sustainable careers. So we're trying to solve problems both for unemployed people by getting them jobs, but we're also trying to solve problems for employers who are having trouble recruiting diverse, kind of committed entry-level talent that they're going to be able to retain.
Excellent, thank you. And Conor, I know you, Conor. You've been on the pod a few times, but hey, let's, God forbid no one else, if someone hasn't listened to one of our episodes, do a quick intro. Great to have you back again.
Yeah, cheers, Chris. So I'm Conor Cotton. I am the managing director of Not Going To Uni. For anyone that doesn't know and hasn't, like Chris said, God forbid, watched one of our previous episodes, Not Going To Uni is an organisation aimed at supporting young people into the world of work and bridging that gap between education and employment by being a recruitment marketing agency specialising in recruitment marketing campaigns aimed at Generation Z.
Brilliant. Well, I've already done a shout out before about this on the pod, but thanks again for you and Not Going To Uni for doing this partnership. We've got a few episodes that we're really looking forward to recording, getting some good chat out there and getting it out to our listeners and our viewers on podcasts and YouTube. So earlier on this month, saw an article from Business Insider that was talking about. Let me see what it actually said. Maybe it's a little bit edgy, but I suppose it's going to be, it said young workers hate their job and employers should be worried. When people are entering, the world of work for the first time, they come with a great enthusiasm because it's the start of their career and they obviously, have high hopes for what they can do and what they can achieve. But Gallup, which is a pretty respectable source of data, they do regular research on employee engagement around the world. And they found, actually, this is what the article was based on, found that people under 35 were less engaged with their jobs. And actually, since COVID, that's reduced from 37% of them engaged to 33%. Now, actually, I think those numbers are pretty low anyway, but the reduction is still worrying. So let's talk a bit about that. My kind of view is that, it's when people are starting out, it's really important to have the career choice there, and if they're not going into the jobs that are right for them, they're maybe going in maybe a bit blinded than they could be, then of course there's going to be a chance that they're going to be less engaged in what they do. So let's talk about that. Conor, should we start with you, mate? What are your initial thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think one of the, and this piggybacks on the previous episode, Chris, that we did together in the studio when we were discussing actually our ambassadors' opinions on going into the world of work. There's a lot of the issues are driven by probably a lack of understanding in that recruitment process and in that that jump from education into employment on different industries, different companies, different pathways. Job descriptions are notoriously dull and jargon full, and often that either leads to a young person going into a role they potentially don't necessarily understand fully, and then potentially becoming unhappy in that role and wanting to career change, or young people just never pursuing roles that may be perfect for them because there is that lack of understanding, which means they never will find that dream role and dream career. So I think that's played a huge factor, and that's why we're hopefully still seeing this rise in sort of recruitment, marketing, and employer branding, especially at Generation Z level, where companies are trying to do more there, and it's something that we work with Generation UK very well on as well, in terms of raising awareness of what they do, which I know Steph will talk about more, to ensure that young people and outside of just the bracket of just saying it's young people and Gen Z, just in general, people understand that there's an alternative pathway into careers with, in this case, generation as well.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, it can't be too much to ask that there's more people who are doing jobs that they at least like more than they do at the moment. And I think that does start with being as educated as possible about the options that are open to you. And if you're just being sold at all the time and saying, come and join us, then it's quite limiting, really. But Stefanie, so that thing about bridging the gap between organizations struggling to find the right talent, fill vacancies, and the issues with youth unemployment, and you guys are the bridge. Tell us a bit more about that, because I'm sure we're going to be touching on the things that we're talking about when you tell us about that. So tell us a bit more about what you guys do to be that bridge.
Yeah, for sure. So as I said, we work globally. We started in the US in about 2015. We're now in about 16 different countries. Obviously, each country has its own problems to solve. They're all very different. But through our skills boot camps, what we're doing is taking people who are unemployed, who often have faced particular barriers to employment, whatever that might be, and training them up in the technical skills they need to do a certain job, but also training them up in the soft skills and the growth mindset and the resilience and the perseverance and all that good stuff that they're going to need to be a really standout employee and actually be happier in their roles as well. So obviously, it's pretty obvious, I think, how we solve problems for unemployed people. Ultimately, we get them jobs at the end. So although we're a training provider, we're a bit of a different training provider in the sense that we don't just stop once we finish the training. We then actually work very hard to connect people to jobs and work with employers to get our, we call them graduates, our generation graduates, into employment afterwards. But on the employment side, I touched on this briefly, but what we're trying to do on the employer side is kind of open hearts and minds a bit in employers and get them to consider non-traditional candidates. So that might be candidates who haven't been to university, candidates who have experienced particular barriers, just people that maybe are non-traditional for certain industries. Open their hearts and minds to that through the business lens of actually that's better for your company. A diverse workforce is better for your company, full stop. We know that, studies support that. But we also know that our graduates, because of the training that they've had, particularly the soft skills and the growth mindset training they've had, are much more likely, I think, to still be in employment with that organization after a longer period of time. So we've currently trained, I think, about just over 1,500 people we've gotten jobs for so far through our skills boot camps in the last 2 to 3 years. Of those, 90% are still in employment with the same organization after a year. And of that 1,500 as well, really 2 out of 3 have been promoted in the last year as well. So we're getting people into jobs where there is progression opportunities, and that is instantly to make someone feel happier. But they're also just going to be happier in their role because they've had proper training. They are going in with their eyes wide open. They've had a chance to kind of almost try out the job for however long the boot camp was, 6, 7, 8 weeks before they go into it. So we're keeping them happier. But obviously, we're also keeping employers happier because they're getting a diverse, well-trained workforce who are going to stay longer and ideally progress throughout the organization.
Brilliant. Well, then that's, it's great for the business because retaining staff is a challenge if you don't do what you're doing, ultimately, isn't it? I mean, it's great that you're giving people the opportunity to go into an organization with their eyes wide open, and knowing it's not necessarily exactly what's in store for them, but they say that boot camp, like the term boot camp, that's a really good idea. It's like properly being prepared for what they're going into, rather than just picking a job, applying for it, hoping you get through the process, and then still wondering when you're joining that organization, what's it really all about? You don't really. So I'm not surprised that you have people who are starting out in their careers actually going, I'm not sure how I fit into this, and engagement then off the back of that drops, and that's something actually can follow on throughout someone's whole career. It's not just at the start. It can be something that can be detriment to everything else, I think. And so you said you've had 1,500 people in the last 2 years?
100 so far. Yeah. So although Generation as a global organisation has been set up since 2015, the UK and Ireland branch has only been in operation for a couple of years. And as you can imagine, quite a big chunk of that was COVID as well. So we were still able to be training people and getting them into work during COVID, which was amazing. So yeah, about 1,500 or so people over the last couple of years. We're hoping to enroll another 1,400 learners onto our programs this year. And then what we do is provide 6 months of post-program support to get people into jobs afterwards. So we don't kind of just drop people like a hot potato, after they complete the training program.
That's it. You've done the courses, off you go. That's it. Yeah, nice.
Exactly. There's a lot of providers like that. There are a lot of providers like that.
Well, actually, I was going to say, it's clearly you're filling a gap here, and one of those gaps is that yes, there might be organisations that provide training and prepare people, but that thing about then taking them that step further on is really important. Why? I mean, what's lacking, do you think, in terms of the system? And obviously, naturally, it's kind of to think about the roles of education to prepare people for the world of work. I'm assuming you're addressing gaps in current systems. You could argue should be offered by schools and colleges, even universities as well. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think back to my sort of state school sector career advice provision, which was sorely lacking. I think it was one appointment maybe in year 11, and that was about it. Not much more in university, to be honest. So we are, finding that particularly our young learners, because we serve all ages, but we do have a particular focus on young learners, kind of between 18 and 30. We do find that, even the ones who have been to university are just really struggling to either understand what it is they want to do and understand what a particular job title means or a particular sector actually involves, and also just finding it really hard to get their foot through the door as well. So Generation kind of exclusively works in industries that are pretty competitive, very popular. So most of our training programs are in the tech industry. Not all, but most of them are. That's kind of our bread and butter. A lot of data programs, a lot of software engineering programs, that kind of thing. But often, particularly for non-traditional candidates who haven't got loads of connections growing up, those kind of terms, that kind of terminology, data, software, tech, doesn't mean much. It's words that we hear every day, but they don't necessarily. I before Generation, I don't think I could have told you what a data engineer does on a daily basis. Please don't test me now. But we hear these terms every day, but if you don't have connections in those industries, you're less likely to understand what that actually means. And as Conor said, these are jobs that could be perfect for people, but they're just not being considered because either the candidate doesn't understand what it means through no fault of their own, or because they don't think they've got a standard chance of getting into it, particularly those without degrees. So as I said, touched on before, what we're trying to do is get employers to understand the benefit of diversifying their workforce and really get them to strongly consider candidates who maybe are a little bit alternative or a bit non-traditional for these very competitive industries. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's like any great relationship, isn't it? You know, they know a lot about each other before they go for anything, you know, decide to, you know, go all in, so to speak. There's an awareness that there will be a good fit, you know, and you can take that into lots of different elements of life, you know, but ultimately it's about how you can have the best relationships with, you know, other people who, you know, who can help you, you know, progress in what you do and enjoy what you do. But Conor, we talked about some of this in one of our previous episode, when we had a WhatsApp group from your ambassadors, where you chucked in a few questions and got quite a few responses back. So it's a bit of a continuation of that. But let's talk about some of the feedback in that WhatsApp group, but also generally, look, you see, Not Going to Uni is in touch with, you know, many people looking for that first job. So what is your kind of feeling? What kind of vibe trends do you see in terms of those concerns that people have and their needs when it comes to finding that proper ideal first job?
Yeah, well, I think one of the big things, and it was actually a theme that came out when we did those WhatsApp questions, Chris, that we didn't drill into because it was a theme that kind of came up a little bit later when we were recording, was actually around Gen Z almost going into the world of work knowing that they're going to be job hoppers and career hoppers. There was an article that I actually did an interview on at my previous company in 2018, 2019 around the prediction that Gen Z going into the world for the next 5 years would job hop as much as they physically could because of their happiness. And I've tried to find it, and I'm pretty sure it's this Ripple Match article, which, Chris, I'll send you after this.
Yeah, we'll chuck it in the comments.
And that was the prediction then. Yeah, and then you've got articles that have come out tail end of last year from the likes of Forbes, etc., saying, actually, yeah, this is true. Gen Z are job hopping, and these are the reasons why. The big one on there was unhappiness, so not being happy in their existing roles and progress, and knowing that happiness is key. Happiness is the biggest commodity, and so on and so forth. And if they've not got that, then they're going to job hop. And one of the other big ones was around benefits packages, because young people have become much more savvy to what a good benefits package with an employer looks like. Because when we look at roles on Not Going to Uni, if I was to show you a job description from probably around the time of that first article, 2018, if you looked at them, they're still full of jargon, but there won't really be anything about benefits. The salary will be hidden. It will be very much it'll be black and white. It'll be you're employed as X. X means you do this, done. Salary competitive, something like that. Whereas you look at employers now, they're having to go to the nth degree with the amount of information. But that's a good thing, because they need to, and they know that that's part of their attraction strategy as well. And then the final theme was actually just, and we got this, Chris, I think, in that WhatsApp group a lot, was actually employees and young employees expect more from their employers than they probably ever have done previously.
Yeah.
There's culturally, funny enough, I had this conversation with Sean, who's the MD I replaced at Not Going to Uni, and we were saying how there was a request from a member of staff. I won't go into it too much. There was a request from a member of staff that he laughed at, and he was like, bloody hell, when I was MD, this would have never happened. And then he actually paused and said, actually, he was like, culturally, the reason they're saying this is because it's the norm. You know, it's the norm. He was like, actually, I can understand why they're asking this, because it's the norm. So employees expect a lot more from their employers now, because that's where social media, etc., has all played a part. Because generally, if you're building a company, if you're an employee at a company, you're often building in public and sharing in public, be it on LinkedIn or other social platforms, and that drives towards your employer brand and everything else. So there's so many contributing factors, and it's really interesting. I'll drop the Forbes article as well, Chris, that I found, that was then picking up that article from 2018 and saying, actually, yeah, this article was true. These are the reasons why. And I think that really matches the themes we got in that WhatsApp group and in our last pod interview as well.
Well, I'll chuck that link in the description for sure, so people can ping over to that and go into more detail on that. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Connor. And not, people only have to go to Glassdoor to actually see what people are saying. The world is so much more transparent. You only have to go onto TikTok, you only have to go onto LinkedIn, only have to go onto Glassdoor, and insert God knows how many other places you can go to. Reddit, oh my goodness, Reddit. It's just an absolute gold mine of insights. So because the world's much more transparent, I think then, those demands are much more there, aren't they? Because otherwise, before, those are kind of hidden within the walls of those organizations. And that transparency is no bad thing. I think it's got to a situation now where it's certainly not mainstream, but their organizations are now actually don't say competitive salaries. Right. So let's get down to, what can employers do to address this? We talked about, making sure that people are starting to want to start their career or take that first step in their career with confidence. So what can employers do to actually help and ensure that actually they are entering jobs that they're going to stay and do and enjoy and contribute to the organization, but also contribute to their own, growth and their own happiness? Steph, should we start off with you?
Yeah, for sure. So I think we've touched a bit upon sort of investing, I suppose. So investing in their well-being in the workplace, investing in the amount of time and energy and effort they put into writing job descriptions, stuff like that. That's not kind of my particular area of expertise. I'll let maybe let yourself and Conor talk about that a little bit more. But in terms of kind of how to kind of almost preempt or prevent that problem even happening in the first place, it's I think for me, it's about partnering with people like Generation, diversifying the people that are coming into the workplace. That means you're going to have a diverse range of thought processes, beliefs, backgrounds, all that kind of thing, and that is going to strengthen your workforce. That's going to provide you with a much better set of circumstances to come up with better ideas on how you're going to invest in your workplace. And I think, as I said, just being really open to non-traditional candidates. So employers are able to use Generation as like a recruitment agency, just a much nicer recruitment agency because we're a charity, and that feels good, right? To be able to use a charity as your recruitment agency. But they can partner with us actually to both hire from us and know that they're getting really well-motivated staff rather than just going down the easy traditional routes of just going and cherry picking from a few universities, which might feel easy and it might feel like that's what we've always done. But you're going to get the same kind of staff coming in who are maybe, got some technical skill but don't have the soft skills that they need, or vice versa, don't know enough about the industry, and they're going to leave pretty quickly without kind of contributing so much to the organization. Or you can do something that's slightly less traditional, maybe a little bit harder to start with, and think about how you can diversify and think outside the box in that sort of sense. So I think using places or people like us as recruitment agencies is the first one, but we also partner with employers to help them understand what their needs are. So we only design programs where we know there's employer need, and we work with employers to design our training programs where we know that there's A, lots of vacancies, and B, maybe a bit of a misunderstanding in the general public about what that sector means or what that job means. So they can also work with us, and we can help them understand what their needs are in terms of employees. If they keep making the same mistakes in terms of who they're hiring and they're not investing very well in their workforce, we can help them understand where are you going wrong there? What skills do you actually need in your workforce? Okay, let us know that, and then hopefully we can then partner a bit more formally and start working together to build that pipeline of employees coming into their organization. So unapologetic plug there for what we do. But we very much exist to help employers and the industry as well as unemployed people.
Well, look, it's a massive need, so it's it's right to talk about what you guys can offer, definitely. And I think it's because you talked about boot camp and the training that you provide, and especially like focusing on, for example, tech roles that there's not necessarily right understanding about those roles, but also a thing about employers not really knowing how to package it properly, because what on earth is insert a job title that only the person who's hiring understands, so tell us a bit about the kind of things that someone would learn on a boot camp.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it depends on what program you pick, but as I said, most of them are tech programs. There's a couple that aren't. We've got one in healthcare and one in green energy, because that I think is probably kind of competing with tech at the moment for being like the fastest growing booming sector in the UK. There's already 140,000 job vacancies in the green sector, and that's only going to grow. So as I said, predominantly tech, but we've got a couple of others as well. So yeah, it depends on the program, but whatever the program is, you'll learn the technical skills in order to actually do the job at the end of the program. With most of our programs, although they're called a particular thing, so one of them will be called data engineering or data analyst, that doesn't necessarily mean that's the exact job title you'll get at the end. So we'll help you understand what the pathways are at the end of the bootcamp. So you'll get the technical skills.
Yeah, nice.
You'll get all the soft skills as well. How to be a good team member, essentially, in a nutshell. How to get on at work, how to have a growth mindset, how to be resilient to setbacks. How we do a lot of confidence raising, aspiration raising, that kind of good stuff. And then lastly, in the last few weeks of your program, that's when we bring in all the employability support as well. So you'll continue with all the technical learning, but in the last few weeks, we bring in our employability support team, and they work with every single learner to coach you on mock interviews and CV writing, cover letter writing, but also start working with you to help you understand what are your interests, what do you actually want to do in job. We're not going to try and matchmake you with an employer that or a job that you've said I've got absolutely no interest in. So they take the time to get to know our learners and understand what their interests are, what their skill sets are, what the motivations are in those final few weeks. And that's when the partnerships team, who are the ones who go out and work with employers, they'll then start talking to employers. Okay, we've got, I don't know, Bob over here who is interested in a particular thing, or he wants a small company, or he doesn't want a big company, all that kind of stuff. And they'll start matchmaking. So there's a lot of effort and a lot of care and crafting that goes into kind of matchmaking our learners to employers. So it's the three facets, basically. You've got the technical skills, the soft skills, and the employment skills as well. Because we understand that the kind of people we're bringing into our boot camps don't necessarily have loads and loads of cultural and social capital. They don't necessarily know how to conduct themselves in an interview. They don't know what employers are looking for. They don't know how to play the game, to get into work, because sometimes it is a bit of a game and you've got to know the right things in order to do that. So that's why we emphasize the employability stuff a lot towards the end of the program.
Yes, that's brilliant. I mean, because when you say that, it makes me think about the way it usually is. Okay, now obviously this isn't the case in all situations, but someone leaves education and they're on the edge of education. Education's all behind them. Everything's been kind of given to them around structure. Of course, as you go on, there's less, the more onus is on yourself to guide your own learning and your own development, but then it stops and it's all down to you. And you have employers going, come and join us because you can make a thing of your career, you can advance, you can have this impact. And I think there's this element of what does this mean? Where do I even start? I've got maybe something that maybe my family members have been interested in. Not to say that you can't go into careers that your families have very happy and successful careers. We also don't necessarily have that as well. Also, people just going, I'm going to go for one thing. And going back to your point, Conor, about people hopping jobs, literally can be in jobs for a few months at a time. That's because they are, in a way, doing their own boot camp while they're actually in work. So to be in a position to be able to get that, be guided in that way, I think is really important. It's great that you guys are offering it. And Conor, from your side of things and what you see and think employers need to be doing more of, what's your view in terms of helping people into that world of work first?
Well, I think transparency is probably a big thing. Being more transparent, like we were saying when we were discussing that Forbes article and stuff, and going back to that previous episode again, transparency in terms of be it salary and benefits packages, what it's actually like to work within the company, leaning on things like Glassdoor, etc., to try and show a real account of what it's like to work somewhere. And that authenticity is really important. We do that a lot with the work we do with the Royal Air Force. In Find Your Force, the podcast series that we create, which is around the stories behind the uniform, the people, what it actually means to work there as an individual, and your passions, beliefs, religion, whatever that may be, how that influences you and is supported when you're in the Royal Air Force. We actually did, funny enough, Steph was there. We did some filming for Generation UK a couple of weeks ago in their WeWork offices in London, and we had a fantastic chap who had done one of their boot camps, and he came and gave one of the most authentic interviews I think I have ever heard in my life. I've sat with our Create team, and honestly, I've listened to so many interviews, and sometimes you're like, this is so scripted. The employer has literally told you what to say. Hopefully by the time this podcast goes out, that interview will be sort of live. I know it's being edited at the moment, so Chris, I'll give you that to put in the show notes, because what it shows from Generation's perspective, and using Generation as a case study here, is just a really authentic what it means to do a boot camp and what that can do for you going forward in a career path. There was a line in there where he said something along the lines of, my career was at a dead end. There was no pathway for me. I had nothing, and this is how I'm going to do it. It was just so raw and so authentic, and those stories and that raw, authentic, through the window style of content, etc., in your employer brand, in your recruitment marketing strategy, is so important, because people see through bullshit now.
Absolutely,
you've got to remember that. You've got influencers losing followings, and that is being widely publicated. If young people, or people in general, actually, I should say, think actually you're not authentic and you're just spouting off a message that's not even yours, and they'll lose followings overnight. So if they're doing that from a consumer facing perspective, they'll do that from an employer and recruitment perspective as well.
True, de-influencing was, I was at an event yesterday, and de-influencing was a big part of that, of that conversation. And you can easily see that being done in terms of employers more, yes, don't get this product. This product doesn't stand for what they say. Then you can easily see that being translated into the employee experience. You mentioned find your force. Let's say a bit more about that in terms of the kind of content that is on Find Your Force.
Yeah. So when we first came up with the idea of Find Your Force with the RAF, the tagline was stories behind the uniform, because there's ample amounts of content out there, and we are some of the people who create that content around a day in the life of an engineer, what it means to do this role, what it means to do that role. There never has been any content actually drilling into what it means to be an individual with your own individual needs and your own individual life story, and what that means when you're in the RAF. And just from meeting a couple of people, that's what made us come up with the decision that we needed to go to the RAF and say we need to extract some of these amazing stories that we've been seeing and hearing just by being around bases and talking to different people. So that's really what Find Your Force is about. Is what makes you you. And when I say you, I mean the individual we're interviewing. What makes them them? What is it in their makeup that makes them who they are, and means that they can then use that to flourish in a career within the Royal Air Force. We've had stuff around faith and career. We've had stuff around oh God, I'm trying to think of some of the themes now. We've had stuff around being a woman in the forces, around not being someone who's gone to university, and how originally thinking that might hinder them, and actually that hasn't. Being a parent in the armed forces, we had an amazing interview around was it Juliet around like pushing boundaries and how, you know, she was someone who
Yeah,
her glass was,
outside your
you know,
comfort zone.
never, I don't even think it was, yeah, I don't even think it was half full. I think it was probably like, I think there was a smidgen of drink in there because she was always pushing to do more before she was in the Royal Air Force, and how that helped her flourish by the RAF pushing her to do more and supporting her with pushing to do more. So this, yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing, some of the stories. And I think it's really important that as employers and as recruitment marketing people, we probably don't think of the people enough. We probably focus so much on the role, and trying to sell the job and trying to sell what they do day to day, that we kind of forget actually there's a person in that uniform or in that role, and actually that's the person that people are going to relate with. An 18-year-old is not going to relate with a job description. They're going to relate with an individual who's like them. So that's where that authenticity, that transparency we spoke about is really important. And that's what Find Your Force does.
Well, a slight disclosure, there is something that I'm familiar with myself, because we worked on that together, and it's been great working on that. I think, it's I sort of Find Your Force is such a great vehicle for, we've put underneath it kind of the Career Potential podcast, because it is literally about how you can find your force. And I think it's great is our kind of aim was not to be like, this isn't about selling opportunities at RAF. Of course, that's part of it, but that's not the primary driver of it. If we can have those conversations about being outside your comfort zone, the role of sport and what that's played in me and my career, or the role of religion, and my life and my career, all of these things, is like, there's such a rich bed of conversation that can be had, where not only are you giving people the insight into their lives and really seeing the real people, not just this kind of marketing sheen over things, but actually, really truly authentically themselves. It's got ums and ahs in, it's got hesitations, but that's just normal, and that's great to have in there.
Yeah.
But also it's about being that
100%.
being that utility for people, isn't it? About helping them actually decide what is right for them. And the parents episode is a good example of that. But even parents, and are hesitant and as worried about maybe what they're going to do in their first job than their children are. So, but we'll put a link into that into the episode description for sure. Great. Any final thoughts as we wrap up?
Yeah, maybe just that I think this is not a problem that any one area of the training and employability sector can solve alone. We need to work together to do this. So employers won't solve this alone. Training providers won't solve this alone. The sort of bridges in the middle, like Conor's organisation, Not Going to Uni, won't solve it alone. So we do need to keep kind of linking up. And I think there is a lot of room for improvement in how connected the sort of space is. Ultimately we're all working towards the same thing. We've got the same goals. And so more connection can only be a good thing to help each other solve these problems.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think, when it comes to, any time soon, we're not going to be having schools and colleges with massive career service units or dedicated time and effort and budget to doing this. So actually, employers have a role to play in seeing what they can do beyond just the going into school and presenting their organisation and showing charts that no one knows or what they mean. So I think that close relationship, the role that employers can do to give them that careers advice, or kind of career coaching in a way, I think is really important. But thanks for your time. Really appreciate it. And, we'll catch up later.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
All right, fantastic. Thanks, Chris.